radio. There is a new research came out, this book, I forget what it's called. But he told us some horrible statistics when people began to farm, settling on land. 1/4 of humanity was killed. 1/4. They murdered each other because suddenly they had a piece of land that they had to protect, right? What's the famous sentence? What's the famous line? Good fences make. Why do I need a fence? Why aren't you a good neighbor without a fence? Why? Don't you see right there what you're saying to each other? I need a wall to protect myself from you. I need a fence. So, and we spoke about this last week, and I just want to clarify again, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that is being lost in the noise that we hear on television, whether it's politics or whatever it is, new research, new study comes out, breaking news. We have to be very careful with extremes. Just because we're not born naturally good does not mean that we're born naturally evil. There is a whole range in between. Just because we have a problem with the Islamic radicals or Islamic extremism, jihad, and so on, does not mean that all Muslims are evil. I gave a lecture the other night, and I was just trying to say that I understand why some people, White House, went out of their way for the last several years not to use those words. I understand why. Do you understand why? Why? The moment you say Islamic, they are afraid that people who are simplistic, people who are not sophisticated, people who cannot distinguish, people who go from black to white, either evil or wonderful, those people, the moment they hear Islamic, they will say, oh, Islam is evil. That's the problem. But we need to educate the people that the other extreme is to say, Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam. Nothing? Nothing? No, well, this is the difference. Nothing to do with Islam or everything to do with Islam are two extremes. What about something to do with Islam? So now that we know much more about this guy Farouk, he was a very sophisticated guy, had a good education and so on. And all the neighbors, all the friends have said that he's the sweetest human being. What happened to him? How come he becomes a murderer? Well, he becomes religious. What happened to her? She becomes religious in Islam. So there is something in Islam. There is a connection to Islam. This does not mean that Islam is evil, but it does not mean that it has nothing to do with Islam. We know that this is not true. The moment you hear there is another attack somewhere, do you think, oh, this must be Presbyterians? Or it must be yeshiva boys just came out of Beit Midrash and they decided to bomb something. We know that there is something going on with Islam. So the same is true here. Just because we're not born naturally good does not mean we're born naturally bad. Do you understand this? I hope that this is clear. I don't want to come back to this again and again. If you're still confused, you will not understand anything in life. Forget about Ecclesiastes. You will not understand life. You will not if you're confused. There are people who walk around saying people are naturally good. So why do we need fences? Why do we have gated communities left and right? Why? Why do you have a gate? Why do I have to show my driver's license when I want to visit you? There is something about human nature. And don't tell me it's in America. Give me a break. I just told you that 10,000 years ago, 1/4 of humanity was murdered. By whom? By neighbors. People were killing each other. People are still killing each other. People are beheading each other. Questions, comments? Because I want to move to a very painful subject. We'll go in a minute. Yes,
I
please.
just wanted to remind people that you spoke last year about Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara.
Correct. Correct.
Is that Talmud, by the way?
It is in the Talmud, and I mentioned this last week also. So what does Judaism, and then I'll open for questions if there is any comments or any confusion. I do want you to speak up. I want to make sure that everybody gets it. Judaism does not say we're born evil. We spoke about this. This is not the original sin concept. We're not born, the baby is born without any guilt. Absolutely. By the way, not all Christians believe in the original sin. Like every religion, this is another thing we have to understand. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, there are all kinds of different movements. There are different developments. There is Reform Judaism and there is Ultra-Orthodox Judaism. What do they have in common? Very little, to be honest with you. Very little. So the same is true about Christianity. It's not right, it's not correct to walk around saying, oh, Christianity believes in original sin. Not all Christians believe in original sin. Not all Christians look at the baby and say, unless I baptize that baby, he will be guilty for the rest of his life. No, we're not born with guilty, we're not born evil, but we're not born good. And this may be a confusion. Confusion is with definition. What, like we struggled last week. Somebody, who was it, who was speaking? No, we're just selfish. Is that gentleman here? Who was it?
Me.
Okay, selfishness. What's your name?
Martin.
Martin. So, the definition, we need to be careful. What's the definition of good? The moment we say we are born good, my next question is, and what do you mean by that? Right? What's the definition of good? Martin, give us the definition.
It's how society.
Forget the society. What's the definition of good?
I have no idea.
Okay. No, he's right. He is right. Without society, we don't have a definition of good. If my parents never told me say thank you, I would never say thank you. If my society did not tell me that's not nice, that this is a little boy, and you kicked him and you cut his hair, I would not know that this is wrong. Because when I'm angry, I want to take a knife. So society creates definitions. That's correct. But where does the society get that definition from? Who comes up with that definition? How does the society know what's right and what's wrong? What? We, meaning what? Which institution decides? Religion. Religions decide what's right and what's wrong. So in ancient societies, it was different religions. So in one society, it was the right thing for a mommy to take a baby and drop from the mountain. That's Greek society. In some societies, Mesopotamian, one of the most sophisticated societies, if I see your slave who ran away, I take you and bring you to your master. He should kill you. Different societies create different things. Roman society had different. Mesopotamian had different. Every society. And they had gods. They came up with this idea that there is a God of love and there is a God of war. And there is a God of fertility. So you bring a baby, you burn the baby, so you will have fertility. It's not like, hey, this is you. This is us. These are human beings, ladies and gentlemen. And every king, every emperor was considered God. The Pharaoh was God. The Pharaoh decides. That's what I was explaining this last Shabbos. What happens there? The Pharaoh wakes up in the morning and he has dreams. And the dreams are scary. And he has all these experts who cannot interpret. Well, it's not so difficult to interpret. There are 7 fat cows, and there are 7 very lean cows, and the 7 fat ones eat the lean ones. How come, or the other way around, how come the experts, he's the richest man in the world. He has PhDs left and right. How come they cannot translate to him? They cannot interpret. Because they're scared to tell them the truth. That's why Joseph has to be brought from jail to tell him the truth, that you're not all powerful. Your Majesty, you're more than Majesty. You're Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe. All these people are scared to tell you that you're not in control of your economy. There will be a recession, there will be depression, and people will be starving. Because every emperor was considered God. The Nile, there is another interesting subtlety. I did not have a chance to go into the details on Shabbat. When he dreams, it says that he stands on top of the Nile. When he tells the dream to Joseph, he says, I'm standing on the side of the Nile. There are no coincidences in the Torah. Why doesn't he say, I stand on the top? So basically, he's opening up to a total stranger, a Jew, a Hebrew, from jail, a slave, because he's not ashamed to admit, I was scared. I'm not in control of the Nile. Anyway, this is just such a powerful Torah portion that I didn't have a time. We had a beautiful bar mitzvah here. We had some 250 people here. It was so gorgeous. These kids, how many of you were here when he spoke? All right, quite a few, right? It was one of the best. Last Shabbos, we had an amazing bar mitzvah. People said, right? Ilza says, nobody can beat this one. And this Shabbos, she says, wow, this is even better than the last week's, and so on. Anyway, I did not have much time to go into this. Anyway, let's go back to society. So, definition of good. Society without society. There is no such a thing as definition. Everybody will create their own rules. And people live very separately. If somebody lives on the top of the mountain, never really needs other human beings, he will have their own. He will have his own definition of good. And his definition of good is going to be selfish. If somebody comes to my house, I will kill him. Don't come close. Comments about society, rules, and definition of good. Yes, sir.
You can't do this without getting into the argument of nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. Can you get away from that? I don't want to get into the details. Well, what do you think? So Marty is saying that we need to get into the argument, the famous argument, is it more nature or is it more nurture? Well, you're right. It's both, and there are different philosophies, but I think Judaism and most of you will agree that it's much more nature than nurture. How many of you have twins? Anybody has twins? Okay. How many have more than one child? Are they absolutely the same, your children? They grew up in the same family. They grew up in the same socioeconomic situation, no?
But one was an only child before the second came along. The
Correct.
second one was never an only child, so they're immediately different.
Ah, I see. Okay, that's true. It's possible that one child, because that child lived by himself for the first 2 years or whatever, it affected him and so on. Okay, very soon. Can you take it there, please? Okay. Let's turn off our phones, Let's have one pocket where we don't have to answer. Yes, please.
In the newspaper, I think it was yesterday, it was about, I think it's Thailand. There's a king who loves his dog and wrote a book about the dog. And one of his constituents, the citizens of the country, criticized the dog. And he's been imprisoned because of that. Because they're not allowed to criticize and speak that the king is not good, and you're not even allowed to say his dog is not good.
Okay, so you see, the moment you criticize the dog, you're insulting the king and so on.
That's because they have a
Because they have a military government. What if tomorrow they have a different government? There may be a different rule. So you cannot, this one says you cannot insult my dog. The next one can say you cannot insult my wife. And the next one can say you cannot say anything about my house, and so on. The point is, why did I bring about the twins? Because there is something powerful about human nature that even nurture cannot overpower. Is it possible to change human nature? It's very, very hard. If the entire society would take one child who was born neutral, like we say, not evil, not good, and devote all its energy, it's possible that that child will become a tzaddik, will become a Mother Teresa, who will devote his life, her life, to poor people and so on.
Well, China's been doing that.
China has been trying to re-educate millions of people, and now it's possible to brainwash people. That is true. I am a perfect example. I was brainwashed. My society, that's the danger of societies to make a definition. That's why I have a problem with this, that we blame, we have to be very careful. Societies make definitions. In Thailand, this king decides you will go to jail. In my society, my country, my society, my teachers, my journalists, my judges, my lawyers in my country said that if you say anything, if you tell a joke about Mr. Leonid Brezhnev, you are evil, you are a traitor, you go to Siberia. So I was trained to spy on my parents. I think you remember, I told you the story. One day, I think I was 7, the teacher walked in and she said, "Children, listen very carefully. Grandpa Lenin has a very important job for you. He loves you. And he wants you to do something very important. Tonight, when your parents put you to sleep, pretend that you are asleep, but don't fall asleep. Listen very carefully to what your parents are speaking about. And if they tell us, and tell us tomorrow what they spoke about." My parents were scared of me, and of my sister. And I'm not the only one. In Germany it's the same. And I'm not the only one. The entire society was like this. Why? Because the hero of Soviet children was a little boy, Pavlik Morozov, who was a major hero. Most Americans never heard that name. I remember when I came to America, I was so angry. I said, "Americans, open your eyes. Read the news. Read the books. You will not understand Cold War if you don't understand who you're fighting." In the Soviet Union, every child prayed and praised Pavlik Morozov. In front of every kindergarten, there was a monument to Pavlik Morozov. Who is he? Why is he so important? Why? Right? And we studied everything about him. At the age of 9, Pavlik Morozov did something that made him into a major hero. When Stalin decided to take over collectivization, to take all the land from farmers and force them to join the kolkhoz, the collective farms. So how was it done? It was so successful. In 2 years, 90% of Russian society were mujiks. They were peasants working on a piece of land. How is it possible that less than 2 years later, everybody joined voluntarily collective farms? You understand what collective farms means? That's right. So you have a cow? Thank you. It's mine now. You have 5 chickens? Thank you. Chickens belong to the state now. We Bolsheviks will take care of you. So how was it done? Do you think people gave away their cows? Their grain? Of course not. So 5 commissars would walk into your house and say, "Petrov, Ivanov, welcome. Soviet Union will take care of you. Give us everything you have." Pavlik's father was a rich peasant, what Stalin called kulak. You heard that word? Kulak. 20 million kulaks were murdered. How? They would walk in and they would say, "You have 3 cows, you must be evil." Gone. So in public's case, they did not kill his father. They took away everything they had. Look it up. You can Google today. Look him up. They took everything, but Pavlik was a good boy. A good Soviet boy. His teachers trained him well. So he realized his father was hiding a sack of grain downstairs in the basement. He went back to the office, to the communists, to the Bolsheviks, and he said, "My father is cheating. There is a sack of grain in our basement." They went back, they went downstairs, and they found that sack of grain. They brought Comrade Morozov to the center of the village. They brought the entire village to show them what happens to you if you lie to the Communist Party of the USSR, and they hanged him publicly, in front of public. And they gave Pavlik a medal. Good boy. That night, his grandpa, the father of his father, took a knife and killed his boy because he felt this is a despicable thing to do to your father. This happened in 1932.
These youngsters were brainwashed.
1932. I was born in the 50s. I worshipped Pavlik Morozov. There was a monument to this boy in front of every village, and in front of every kindergarten, elementary school, library, Pavlik Morozov streets, everywhere. He was my hero. He was the good boy. So what's the definition? That's the question. Who decides what's good, what's bad?
What did they do to the grandfather?
That's a good question. I think Grandpa was also killed the next day. That's right, because he killed him. I'm pretty sure they shot him. I have not told this story in 20 years, but basically, of course, he killed a major hero. So this is what we're talking about, definitions of who decides what's right and what's wrong. Comments, questions?
Yeah, what I was thinking of is the fact that every society brainwashes, every nation brainwashes their people, one way or the other, whether it's a Muslim society, whether it's a Western society, everybody has their own code of what's right and what's wrong.
Correct.
So then you get into the concept of everybody's brainwashed in their own way. There's no absolute standard as to what's right and what's wrong. It's the term, you know, it's the term.
What's your response to that?
You're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. There is no absolute standard unless your old nature, God forbid, we just said nature is horrible.
Okay.
Unless there is a God, one God, not two, not 15, and no God. Remember I spoke to you, Brothers Karamazov, one of the most important lines in life. Dostoevsky. When there is no God, all is permitted. When there is no God, all is permitted, because there is no absolute standard. So unless you have one standard, there is no such a thing as good and bad. Every society, every town decides what's good and bad.
Yes.
To make sure hold on a second, to make sure I don't confuse anybody, this is not to say that every atheist is evil. There are people who don't believe in God, or at least they claim that they don't believe in God. There are nice atheists, but it's much harder, and it's impossible to create a society without one standard of morality. Hold on one second. Back to Roger.
What I was going to say is, but then who determines what's right and what's wrong?
God.
God. But there's a different God for different religions, different people. So how can you reconcile that concept? Why are we better than Muslims? Or for instance, we have a Western concept of normative behavior compared to what they do there. And when you think about it, in the 1950s, a lot of the behavior that we had towards morality, towards 1,000,001 things, was so different from what we have now. And we felt we were the only game in town in the 1950s. So things have changed, and it's like an ongoing type of thing. It's fluid, but who determines, how can you reconcile the two?
Okay, this is a very good question, but we don't need to go to the 50s. We need to go back, much, much way back. Judaism was a revolution. I want you to understand that very clearly. Today, people take it for granted. If young Jewish kids would understand who we are, we're the original 60s, 1960s. We're the original revolutionaries. We're the counterculture. That's why there is anti-Semitism. They don't hate us because we're successful. That's a lie. If you walk around thinking they're jealous of us, you're fooling yourself. Jealous of what? Your great-grandparents did not have a piece of bread and they killed us. Has nothing to do with success. I was not successful. Why did they beat me up? We came to this planet with a revolutionary idea. You cannot have 2 gods. You cannot have your 5 gods. You cannot have 15 gods. Because it's confusing. The God of love wants you to love. The God of war wants you to kill. The God of fertility wants you to burn your baby. There are so many gods. Judaism stood up and said something revolutionary and something very chutzpahdik. You know what definition of chutzpah is? Ladies and gentlemen, whatever is sacred to you, whatever you worship, whatever you sacrifice to, it's all garbage. There is only one God, and He spoke to us. You know that book, How to Make Friends and Influence People? Not a Jewish book. You can either make friends or you can influence people. Did we make friends? No. Did we influence people? Yes. The entire world learned from us. Now, we still have not done our job. There is much more to do. But we'll get to Islam and other religions in a minute. I just want us to understand that it started with 20 definitions. What is good? Judaism comes in and says, no! There is one. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And that's the word that you're supposed to say the last second as you walk into the gas chamber. That's what our people said. That's the last word that I say when I'm invited to the emergency room or ICU unit and we know that this is over. That's the word what we say. Why? Because of that revolution. It's the most important revolution in history. Unless you understand that, that's why we're losing Judaism. That's why our kids get involved with every ism except for Judaism. I don't know if you saw the video of the Hanukkah celebration in the White House. Anybody saw it? It was a joke. I was embarrassed. One rabbi, you saw it? One rabbi was chosen to give a speech about Hanukkah. She barely mentioned Hanukkah. She spoke about Allah. She said 4 times, Allah, Allah. It was about disgusting. It was a political campaign speech. Global warming, unlimited immigration, and so on and so forth. We are #1 revolutionaries in history. We died for so many generations for that idea. That unless you have one standard, one source of morality, we don't have a chance. The societies will not make it. Hold on one second. Yes, sir?
Do you think there are many rabbis that do not believe in God?
Who do not believe in God? Rabbis who do not believe in God. That's a tough one. Well, we had a rabbi here, right here, 2 years ago, who said he doesn't believe in the Torah in front of many of you. So, yes, I would say the following. I don't want to say they are atheists, they don't believe in God. But I think they pick and choose. They pick whatever is in right now. This woman, in my opinion, did disservice to Jewish people for the last 3,000 years. What she spoke about on Hanukkah, this was her opportunity. The whole world is there. 300 people invited to the White House. This is not what I would have chosen to speak about. I just told you Hanukkah is one of the richest, deepest, profoundest festivals we have, especially for America. It's all about America. You and I are Greeks, ladies and gentlemen. We are living Hanukkah story. We are reliving. More and more people are walking out. More and more people are attracted to Greek culture than to Jewish culture. I don't have to prove to you. You know that. How many people come on Shabbos? How many people show up at the Kravis Center? You tell me right now. How often do I get 2,000 Jews here? So this is a profound holiday. So I don't know if we can say some rabbis don't believe in God. Now I do have to say, this is hurtful. A woman came over to me at one of the events and said, I live far away, but I'll come to your shul if you tell me that you're pro-Israel. I said, what are you talking about? She says, I cannot find a shul or a rabbi who are passionately Zionist. She says, I go from shul to shul, and the rabbi stands up and attacks Israel. She says, I cannot stand it. And this is not the first time I heard it. You remember last year, somebody in Boca told me. She says, I go from shul to shul, and she says, I want to cross. That's a sadness, that we have rabbis now who are against Israel. You can criticize Israel. There is nothing wrong. Israelis criticize their country. But to basically anti-Zionism, and we have organizations. We have J Street. We're going to have, by the way, number 2 person from J Street. Peter Weiss. Peter Weiss is putting together a very interesting event. He is going to debate that person. I hope you're all here, because we have not had the date yet. We will let you know. This is going to be a hot event, because I'm sure the media will pick it up and so on. Because the truth has to come up. They call themselves still pro-Israel. Yes?
If you're going to have J Street at all, I think you also have to show the film. The one that they didn't show here.
Well, we'll see. I don't know if we can do both, but Peter knows that film. He's the one who wanted to bring this film. And I trust Peter. He's prepared to the debate. Anyway, let's go back. What was the last question? Oh, the rabbis who don't believe in God. There was another hand. Donald.
Was Judaism the first?
Please turn off the phone.
Was Judaism the first religion in the United States, in the world?
No. Judaism is was the first, and is the first religion in history that began to revolutionize in terms of one God. It's called ethical monotheism. I spoke about this a little bit last year, but it's not a bad idea to remind you who we are. We stand, open any dictionary, Judaism, and you will see Judaism introduced to the world the idea of ethical monotheism. So, there were many religions in the world before Judaism. Judaism comes to stop the evil and says, if you want morality, if you want a clear definition what is good and what is bad, you have to accept that there is only one God. And every nation says, get out of here. And Jews said, no, we mean it. Get out of here. No, we mean it. We'll burn you. No, we mean it. We'll kill you. We mean it. We'll rape you. We mean it. You will not have a place to live. You will be homeless. We mean it. We continued all this time until today. And in America, all the freedom in the world, and the shuls are empty. And people are walking out. And they find something more spiritual in Buddhism, in, I don't know, Taoism. They go to India. They live on a ashram, somebody just told me, what's going on with this person? Are they, is he sick or something? I said, no, that's the Mishigas now. We have to go to ashram to find spirituality. Comments?
The Bible, of course, our Jewish Bible, has so many unethical tales in it. Today we have Jews, especially the Orthodox, who do terrible things, immoral things. So what, it's just us as well, and I don't understand.
Okay, that's a good question. So hold on. The question is, but is the Bible all ethical? So number one, and this is another issue that a lot of Jews forget, Christians who hated us for 2,000 years, they always would go to the Bible. It's the same way that people go to the Quran right now and they say, look, Quran is filled with their commandments. Go murder them, kill them. You find a Jew, kill him. Most religions don't depend just on one book. Yes, it's the holiest book. The Torah is the holiest book we have. But it's not the only book that we have. So we have what's called the written Torah, Torah Shebichtav, and we have the oral Torah. It's called oral because for 700-800 years it was transmitted from teacher to student. Oral. It was never written down. And eventually at some point the rabbis got nervous and they said, it's going to be lost, we need to write it down. And they wrote it down, and what's the next book after the Torah? We spoke about this 3 years ago. I gave you a whole list. What comes after the Torah and the Hebrew Bible? What's the next book? That's very important. The Mishnah. The Mishnah was written, put together by Rabbi Judah, the prince, about 2,000 years ago, 2nd century of Common Era. And that kind of brought together what Judaism is supposed to be in terms of commitments and the commandments and how do you boil the chicken and what do you do and so on. But we didn't stop there because the Mishnah is kind of like stenography. This is what you do. Boom, done. So then the rabbis continued oral Torah. They spoke, they said both in Israel and in Babylon. And remember, many Jews ended up in Babylon. We had two centers. Like today we have Israel and America. We had Israel and Babylon. The Talmud, the second book after the Mishnah, is called the Talmud. The Talmud explains the Mishnah. So Judaism, the way we live, ladies and gentlemen, is not according to the Torah. The Torah has strange laws. If I see you lighting a light on Shabbat, I have to bring you to the court, and you'll be punished. And you can imagine what in the Torah times they did to somebody who broke Shabbat, desecrated Shabbat, and so on and so forth. So without the Talmud,
It's written, Lo Shuvari Eish Shabbat.
correct. Lo tiver esh, do not start a fire on Shabbat. That's in the Torah. But then the Mishnah and the Talmud begin to explain to us. And in fact, what I wanted to begin today is to show you how the Talmud sometimes turns everything upside down. We mentioned this last week. An eye for an eye. I think it came, or maybe it came up on Shabbat.
No, here.
It came here. An eye for an eye. Oh, that's right. And Arlene was so passionate that she was talking about, it's not about, an eye for an eye sounds horrible. It's like, you pluck my eye, I'm going to do the same to you. But the rabbis looked at that and said, no. It means money. It means compensation. And in addition, they also said, only an eye for an eye. So to answer your question, does the Torah have all the ethics in the world? No. You need to look at Judaism. It's true. Judaism developed. For example, slavery is in the Torah. But even in slavery, the Torah, because everybody was into slavery. So, but even in the Torah already, we have so many limitations that one of the rabbis says, you know what, it's better not to have it. You're supposed to feed them. You're supposed to clean them. You're supposed to house them. You're supposed to give him a wife. And after 6 years, freedom. Let them go. Can you imagine if in American South they followed the Torah? And you don't send him away empty-handed. You pay him for all these years. And if he had a baby, the baby goes with him. And the wife, what they did here is horrible. They took a wife and they sold it here, the husband sold there and so on. So the Torah, as I say this Shabbat after Shabbat, the Torah is so psychologically profound. Thousands of years before Freud, the Torah understood human nature. If God stood up and said to the Jews, no slavery from now on, people would laugh. You don't change the world overnight. That's another problem. A lot of utopian movements, the problem with them, we're going to transform America. Be careful. Be careful with anybody who stands up and says, we're going to change the world. I think I told you last week, I think it was Victor Hugo, who said, you know what, everybody wants to change the world. They should start changing themselves first. The world would be a better place. Be careful with people who want utopia tomorrow. Shalom achshav, peace now. When do we want it? Now. Freedom. When do we want it? Now. Be careful with any movement that says now. Nothing happens now. It's a long process. Back to the question.
Why then the Hebrew schools don't teach both? I mean, they just come out with the Bible. They don't teach both. That's what everybody learns. That's what I learned. Oh, I never learned the other thing.
I think you can all answer this question.
No, but even in little storybooks, they can still have a little story about Joseph or something, and then have a little story about what it means.
Well, I've said this on for years. The problem, I think, with American Judaism is Hebrew school. It's better not to have Hebrew schools, because Judaism is not for children. What we're doing is we're doing a lot of damage. We teach children ridiculous, primitive version of what Judaism is all about. I mentioned this last week. Hanukkah. Ask any American Jew, what's the most important story about Hanukkah? What do they say? The oil. The oil. There is nothing about oil in the story of Hanukkah. Nothing. It's never mentioned. Not Josephus, not the first book of Maccabees, not the second book of Maccabees. It's a primitive, childish story that we tell the children. Hanukkah, I'm telling you, is one of the most profound holidays. And not for America only, by the way, but also for Israelis. We had an Israeli just walked in. Bar, come in, stand up. I want people to meet you. We have a new shlicha. Shlicha is an emissary from the State of Israel, from Jewish Agency. You all remember Shani and Nir? They were loved here. She's already loved in this community. She showed up, she arrived here the day before Simchas Torah. And Ilan Kotler says, you're coming to our temple. And she showed up and she was like, wow, when we spread the Torah, and she had never seen anything like this. So, Bar comes from Israel. The Israeli pioneers, the Chalutzim, they were looking for a model in our history how to create a new state. They looked around. Remember, they were not religious. They were intellectuals, Polish, Russian, Ukrainian kids. That's who started the State of Israel. And they looked around and they found one holiday that spoke to them. What was the holiday? Hanukkah. Why? What's the story of Hanukkah? What's the real story of Hanukkah? Stand up! Stand up and fight! We're not scared. We're going to have an army. Who ever thought about this real Jewish army? The Jewish yeshiva boys, they were beaten up and they were... The Chalutzim said, never! We're going to stand up. We're going to be strong. So for them, there are more songs about Hanukkah than about Pesach in Israel, or any other festivals. Hanukkah is very important to the Israelis, and Hanukkah should be very important to Americans. If you want to understand assimilation and why we're losing the young kids today, look at Hanukkah and look at Palm Beach community. We have 125,000 Jews here. I'm sure that's the first thing she was taught. Out of 125,000 Jews, maybe 11% have any connection to Jewish life. I'm not talking about shuls. I'm talking about anything.
Wow.
Send $10 to Hadassah. Wow! 11%. So we have the freest country in the world. We're not scared. Go to Europe, you'll see people are scared to, I told you, in Scandinavia, I was told by the Israeli security, take off your yarmulke. In Helsinki, there are 900 Jews in Helsinki, in all of Finland. I was scared for my life. So we are the freest country in the world, thank God. We're still the safest country for the Jews. And look what is going on. Where is everybody? Playing golf, cards, in a restaurant, Kravis Center, whatever it is that they're doing. I'm not against all of this. But this is the story of Hanukkah. So Hebrew school, back to that question. Why is not Hebrew school teaching us the profound ideas of Judaism? Because it's a joke, ladies and gentlemen. Did you look forward to going to Hebrew school on a Sunday morning? Give me a break. 3 times a week. Today, nobody has 3 times a week. You know that? You're lucky if you have twice a week now. So twice a week, after, tired kids who don't care, whose parents just dropped them off and went shopping or whatever it is, you think the kids are idiots? If you don't observe anything in the house and send the kids to Hebrew school, you want them to stay Jewish? It was amazing. Now nobody is asking these questions. But I remember when I came to Palm Beach, people would come over and say, Rabbi, what happened? I have 3 kids, they're all intermarried. We bar mitzvah them. We sent them to Hebrew school. What happened? And I want to cry. These are intelligent people asking a stupid question. Just because you had a beautiful party when they were 13 does not mean that they understand the commitment and what's involved and deep philosophy and so on and so forth. I don't want to hurt anybody. I know that every family has been affected by that. Nobody has insurance policy. There are people who keep kosher homes and light candles on Shabbat, and still people, their children intermarry. It's a struggle because it's Hanukkah. Because America is a very attractive society. It's beautiful. It's free. You can do whatever you want. You can walk out. You can do whatever you want, literally. That's Greece. So it's a struggle to stay Jewish. That's why the majority of Jews became Hellenists. It was a small minority. That's the miracle of Hanukkah. The real miracle of Hanukkah is that small, tiny group of kids, basically, overpowered Greek Empire. It's a joke. Superpower. Imagine. Meyer Academy kids decide today we're going to fight ISIS. Let's go. So that's the victory. So Hebrew school, of course you don't know Judaism. That's why you need to teach Judaism, to learn Judaism when you are mature. Otherwise you don't understand anything. It's confusing. You're right. It's not just a story about Joseph and this and that. It's a story about this. It's a story about that. It's a story.
Somebody like you to
Yeah.
explain it to us.
We lost it. We are losing. We are. And it's so painful to me. When people say Judaism is boring, I want to cry. I want to cry. When I was introduced to Judaism, I was like so ecstatic. I said, this is the most gorgeous thing that I've ever seen. It's so beautiful, just this idea is so profound. You can spend your whole life trying to struggle with this. Because the questions that came up today are powerful questions. So what happened? So we're going back to your question. Yes, we started to be the first ones. We were the first ones who said, without one source above America, above the Soviet Union, like you say, we thought we were the only game in town. So who gives us the right to say that we're better than the Soviets? I heard that, by the way. I came to America, I was giving lectures on campuses. I remember when Reagan stood up and said, the Soviet Union is evil empire. You remember that? People screamed. People made fun of it. People said, this is ridiculous. I remember standing at Brandeis University, Jewish school, and I stood up and I said, ladies and gentlemen, President Reagan is right. It is an evil empire. Open your eyes. It is vicious, evil empire. They want to take over the world. A professor stands up. Mr. Feldman, with all due respect, I'm a professor of political science here. And this is a university. We use sophisticated terminology. We don't, America, you don't know about Vietnam, perhaps. You did not grow up here. Do you know about slavery? Have you heard about that? What says that? What gives us the right to say America is any better than others? And I looked at them and I was so angry. I said, sir, you read a few books about the Soviet Union. I lived there and I almost died there. So don't tell me that what the Soviet Union, nobody speaks to him this way. Mr. Professor Cohen knows better. He has a PhD in political science. The confusion that your children are being brainwashed, especially on campuses now. Do you see what's going on campuses now? They forgot about freedom of speech. This is the First Amendment. That's what makes America so special. Of all places on campuses now, we have to be careful. We're not allowed to say that. We're not allowed to say that. Somebody said to a woman, you lost weight, you look lovely. And that person was reprimanded by the boss and says, don't ever do this. This is harassment. Yeah. Who are you to comment on a woman's body? Do you see what we're getting into? They're beheading human beings, ladies and gentlemen. And we're worried, is this harassment? Should I say that? Or am I allowed to compliment my secretary? God forbid. She will sue me. She will sue me. Yes, sir.
When you mentioned that 90% of the people who live here have nothing to do with Jewish causes, did that begin with people that came from Europe 40, 50, 60 years ago, that came with one goal of assimilating?
Correct. That's a very good question.
Assimilating style, was that the beginning of people trying to move away from Judaism?
Did you all understand the question? What's happening? What's happening today? Did it start with your grandparents? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes. They came to America with one goal. I suspect that they forbade you or your parents to speak Yiddish in the house. No, they spoke Yiddish when they did not want you to understand it. Whatever. Yeah, I've heard that story. They never spoke Yiddish.
Well, when my father was about 80-something, and he went to Morse because he wasn't well. And one day when I came to visit, he's talking Hebrew, I guess, or Yiddish. And I said, Dad, where did you learn that? He said, that's what everybody here says. That's the way they talk. But what I realized when I told my aunt, she said, he never learned that because we never taught that at home. He must have picked that up there.
Yeah.
Never.
I suspect that he grew up with that, but he did not want.
He didn't remember that he grew up with
So the point is,
He didn't want it.
I think this is the beginning of all the problems. The immigration is one of the toughest, one of the most painful transformations in life. People who leave everything. Many of you, some of you are immigrants, you know what I'm talking about. So when you arrive in a new society, you're totally confused, you're lost. And so your grandparents or parents, they had one goal. They wanted to become good Americans. And this is another thing, when people say, I will support thousands of Syrian refugees because my grandparents received welcome here in America. There is a big difference. Your grandparents wanted to become good Americans.
That was a settlement movement.
So these people, do they want to become French people? Do they want to have good citizens of Belgium? Do they have to become real Americans? Check it out. Check it out. They don't believe in integration. This is a betrayal of Islam and so on and so forth. Anyway, the point is that it started there. But I also blame rabbis. I blame rabbis and teachers who did not teach Judaism on a sophisticated level, on a deeper level, to explain the beauty of this. We should be so proud. Comments?
Pretty much everybody I know that has been through a Hebrew school or a day school experience has said that they received good training, not education.
Yeah.
I will quote an old consultant years ago that said the difference between training and education is when your young lady comes home from school and says she's taking sex education, you don't get worried.
You don't get what?
Worried.
You don't get worried if she gets sex education. Okay. So basically the point is that there are many schools now who stopped teaching Hebrew. They said, we're wasting time to teach them Aleph, Bet, Baruch, Atah. They will not remember it 2 years from now. And this is not what's the most important thing. Let them say those blessings with English transliteration. I know we have a Hebrew teacher here. But the point is, if I have 3 hours a week, that's the last thing I want to teach.
But the thing is, I was a principal of a Hebrew school, and we had a board, and we had people, and they decided that they wanted kids to be in Hebrew, to say Kaddish after them, to daven, some Jewish history, and some Bible. And then, half of the time, the kids don't show up to Hebrew school because they go to baseball, and they go to doctor's appointment, and everything else. So, in 160 hours a year, because this is what the.
There is no chance.
How much can you give?
There is no chance. There is no chance. Anyway, the chance basically, as a former principal of a Hebrew school, there is no chance. Parents don't give a damn. The children don't want to be there. In a few hours, they miss the school. There is competition. I'm competing with this here. I say to the bar mitzvah kid, where were you? We were expecting you on Shabbat. Well, we had an important soccer game. Soccer game, football game, you name it, you name it, you name it. Everything comes first. If the parents don't make this a priority, you do not have a chance. Because America is very, very attractive. But I don't want to get into this. I want to go back at least to focus on, to finish with the definition of good. So going back to the question. So Judaism is a revolution. Judaism says there is only one God, and only God decides what's right and what's wrong. And if God says it's wrong to betray your parents in America, it's wrong to betray your parents in Syria, it's wrong to betray your parents in the Soviet Union. If this is wrong here, it's wrong there. So this is what Judaism is about. Now, first of all, you could ask the question, and who says it's better than others? That's a good question. Most of those societies disappeared. Most of those religions disappeared. We have one. You and I have done a good job. Most of humanity, not all, but most of humanity accepted that there is only one God. Not all. There is still a lot of work to be done. And most of humanity understands that, by the way, that both words are important. Monotheism is not enough. Islam is very monotheistic. Very. More than Christianity. They do not have the Trinity concept. But monotheism is not enough. See, this is I spoke about this last year. I hope you get it, ladies and gentlemen. If you know just that, you will get most of what needs to be done, to be known. Ethical is not enough. Monotheism is not enough. You need ethical and monotheism together. So all the secular movements, they were ethical, or at least many of them. Communism, Marxism, did not sound evil. When I read the books by Lenin and Karl Marx and Engels, it sounded wonderful. We're all brothers and sisters. We will share everything. We will not have rich and poor. Sounds lovely, right? So, but who decides what's ethical, right? So we need both. So we need monotheism. There is one God, and now listen very carefully. And the one thing that he cares the most is ethics. What is ethics? How we treat each other. Not how much I pray to him. No, how glad, kosher I am. Going back to your question, how come there are ultra-Orthodox Jews who cheat and steal and sell organs? You remember that? Last year, some Hasidic rabbi was selling organs of babies on the market. So, he is very religious. According to what? According to your definition, by the way. I say to people many years ago, I said, don't ever say I'm not religious. You can say I'm not observant. But the moment you say I'm not religious, you're saying I'm a disgusting human being. Because what's religion? More than half of the mitzvot in the Torah is how do you treat your worker? How do you treat your children? How do you treat your parents? How do you treat your cat? The Shema, second paragraph of Shema tells me if I walk into the house and I have a dog and I'm starving, I'm not allowed to go to the refrigerator. I need to take care of the dog. That's in the Torah. That's 3,500 years ago. Do your children know that? They think that they will learn more at Harvard how to be a mensch. So we need both. We need monotheism. There is one God. And the most important thing to him, to God, is not that I pray many times a day. Not that I'm loyal to my tribe. Not that I go and fight jihad. But that I treat human beings ethically. Human beings. Not Jews, not Christians, not Muslims, all human beings. Therefore, if I have a cleaning lady, I've said this on many occasions, and I forgot to go to the bank and she comes every Tuesday to my house, it is illegal for me to say, I'll pay you next week. Whether she's Muslim, Christian, Hindu, it doesn't matter. These two is what we brought to this world. And as a result, most of the time, we have been punished for this. Why? Because human nature does not like this. Because wherever we are, we say to people, no, don't do this, it's not nice. You should treat each other nicely. Who likes that kind of a policeman constantly? We don't like it. When we drive on a highway 65 or 70 and suddenly we see a police car, we're not saying, yeah, finally there is a police here. We need police when we're in trouble, right? Be careful with that also. Don't go to the other extreme. So, most of the time, we have not been welcomed. We have not been thanked for what we've done. Now, deep, profound philosophers, moral people, they love us. You all know Mark Twain's famous line, there is something about the Jews, there is something special about the Jews. Leo Tolstoy, I've read these lines to you. Leo Tolstoy says, it's unique. It's nothing like this ever existed. The Jew beat them all, and he's still here, and he's still bringing light to the world, and so on and so forth. John Adams says, nothing comes close to the Jews. Nothing. John Adams. He says, there is something special. They taught us how to treat each other, and so on and so forth. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. You remember we had a speaker here a year ago who said, Jews called him Rabbi Abraham because he was so Jewish. And there are all kinds of theories about his Jewish blood. I don't care much about blood, by the way. Blood is not so important to me. We know stories. Jewish blood became very powerful Nazis. Leo Trotsky was a Jew 100%. Killed more Jews than perhaps Stalin, and so on. So blood is not as important. It's the values. What do you believe in, and so on. So good people, that's why I keep saying to you, the moment you're confused, is this a good country? Is this a good movement? Is this a good religion? Drop a few Jews there and check it out. If they blossom, wonderful. Why is it that America has been the best country for the Jews? Because America is unique. America is the most incredible country in history. Because from the very beginning, from the foundation, the fathers of this nation said, we will not have any discrimination. Because they suffered discrimination in Europe and so on. What?
Indians, they suffered.
Well, that's something else. That was not part of the Constitution and so on. But you know what? Every nation occupied, they had to deal with this. But I know. I brought it up in that lecture the other night. We discovered that Farouk, the murderer in San Bernardino, who's a sweet guy, very educated, environmental engineer or something, right? Was born in America. So in the beginning, the parents and the neighbors said, he's a sweet guy, I don't know. But apparently there is an interview. Did you read that? In the Italian newspaper, La Strada, they interviewed his father. He said, yeah, at some point he became very religious and he became obsessed with Israel. And somebody, the neighbor, said he was fascinated, not fascinated, he said another word, strong word. Obsessed. And so the father says, and I told him not to worry about Israel. It will disappear in the next 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, if American Gentiles don't wake up, they will never learn the lesson. How many times do we have to prove to them that this is the best litmus test? You want to discover anything about the society, about the culture, about the philosophy, about the university, check out what do they think about the Jews. The moment forget about the father. First of all, the father should be investigated for that. What does it mean? Instead of stopping his son and saying, why do you hate Israel so much? We're American citizens. America loves Israel. Instead of that, he says, don't worry, they will disappear. Nice guy. Nice guy. He gave nice education to his son. But the point is, it's not so. What I'm saying is, it's not that he came out of nothing. It's nature and nurture, right? But the moment Farouk says that, enough said. This is not a human, it's not an ethical human being. Do you understand? This is the best test. And the fact is that history should have taught Gentiles and good people see. That's why serious Christians love Israel. Because history has shown the famous line by Newmoller, Pastor Newmoller. Do you remember that one? During the Holocaust. When they came for the Jews, I did not protest. I was not a Jew. When they came for the communists, I did not protest. I was not a communist. When they came for labor unionists, I did not protest. I was not labor unionists. When they came for the homosexuals, I did not protest. I was not homosexual. When they came for me, there was nobody left to protest. If America and the rest of the Western civilization does not wake up, it's the easiest test. You know what? We don't need to vet or not vet. Just ask, what do you think about Israel? It's evil! I want to... Goodbye, thank you very much. This is the test. What do you think about the Jews? Ask 1 million so-called refugees walking around Europe right now. What do you think about the Jewish people? And I can tell you, I don't need to know anything else about that person. Because of this, it has been the best test throughout history. Evil people must hate Jews. You cannot avoid us because what we represent. Because we represent this. We say, no, 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 no. God does not want you to behead other human beings. That's a challenge. That's a challenge that they cannot deal with. So the world must, there were a few articles about this. Somebody just wrote a big article, How to Fight ISIS. Take terrorism in Israel more seriously. If the world would have taken terrorism 30 years ago, when the first child was murdered by Palestinian terrorists, if the world stood up back then and said, stop it, we would not have Paris, we would not have San Bernardino now. But the world said, it's just the Jews. It's far away, it's Jews, who cares? You know, people don't like Jews. When Hitler began to speak against Jews, where was America? Where did America, why didn't they stand up and say, this is bad news, we've seen history, he is a bad guy? No, Chamberlain said, it's okay, we'll do business. Peace in our time. And Joe Kennedy admired him. So do you understand, my friends? When Stalin began to kill Jews, where was America? American intellectuals, American Jews loved Stalin. Loved Stalin. Admired Stalin. Another book just came out saying that the percentage of Jewish supporters of Stalin in America was higher than any other group. Jews loved Stalin. Yeah, Gadal bekibbutz, no. So Bar is nodding because she knows that even in Israel, there were kibbutzim where you walked into the dining room, you saw a big portrait of Lenin and Stalin. In Israel, the kibbutzim, they were leftists, they were socialists. Yeah? Can you imagine? The worst murderer in history, ladies and gentlemen. He killed his own people. We think it's 40 to 50 million Russians that he murdered. He killed every general. That's why Russia was losing the war in the beginning. He killed every general in 1939, 1940. He was nervous. He was always worried, looking over his shoulder. God forbid somebody will become more powerful in the Kremlin. So this is the test. The moment you see somebody does not like Jews or hates Israel again, I don't want anybody to walk away saying, the rabbi is against criticizing Israel. No, it's okay to criticize Israel. It's not okay to hate Israel. The only country in the world that still has to prove that they have the right to exist. No other country in the world has to prove this. So watch out, ladies and gentlemen, and teach your neighbors. Forget the Jews. The non-Jews have to wake up. They always begin with the Jews. They never stop there. It's the best test if you want to know, is this a good philosophy? Is this a good religion? Is this a good country? That you and I are not allowed to walk into Saudi Arabia. At the airport, they will stop you. Is this a nice country? You tell me. You're not allowed to walk, forget Jews. You're not allowed to arrive in Saudi Arabia wearing a cross. So what does it say about ethical monotheism? Maybe it's monotheism, but is it ethical? I am a second-class citizen because I wear a cross or I wear a kippah? Why? Why? What human? God created me and a Muslim. Who says that they are higher than us? And by the way, even the golden age of Middle Ages, when we were okay, they were not killing us in Spain. You know, the Jews were still considered second-class citizens. If a Muslim was on a horse, I had to get off my horse. I'm not allowed to be on a horse when a Muslim is on a horse. So you want to say this has nothing to do with Islam? Excuse me. But be careful, don't say everything to do with Islam. That's also not fair. There is 1.3 billion Muslims in the world. Not everybody believes in jihad, and not everybody is beheading people. We have 3 minutes left. I'd like to take one question. I'd like to invite our President Ilan to make some announcements to welcome you. Yes, sir.
What did you think of the Pope last week telling his flock, don't try to convert Jews to Catholicism? They are our older brothers, and try to avoid anti-Semitism.
That's true. Pope Francis is a sweetheart. First of all, the Pope said last week we should not try to convert Jews because there is an anniversary of Second Vatican Council. We're celebrating, what was it, 1960? What? It's 50 years now. It's a major event in Catholic history. When the Pope changed the major documents of the Catholic Church that saying Jews are not responsible for killing Jesus, and we should stop converting them. So the Pope said similar thing, and I've heard wonderful things about the Pope. Remember, I was in Buenos Aires this year, and I met major rabbis there, including the Pope's rabbi, who's very close to him. By the way, you know that there is a rabbi who is going to be a minister now in Argentinian government. It's very interesting. They had elections last month. So there was a rabbi, I had lunch with him. He said, if my boss wins, I will be a minister in the government. Anyway, I have a problem with the Pope because he, how should I put it? He is, first of all, you know, again, Argentinian theology, the liberation theology is very anti-capitalism, anti-American, and so on. So he says sometimes inappropriate things about American capitalism. Remember in Philadelphia, he stood up and attacked capitalism and so on. But what he said also in Nairobi last week was very disturbing to me. He said that the problem with terrorism is desperation and poverty. We need to stop poverty and the terrorism will disappear. I have said this for years. For years, this is one of my passions. Do not buy this Karl Marx philosophy. Evil is evil. It has nothing to do with poverty. It is a lie. Don't buy this. This is going to confuse you. There are millions and billions of poor people who do not behead human beings. Your Baba and Zayda were naked and burwas. They had no shoes. Pearl Resnick arrived in this country without shoes. This is Marilyn's mom. Her yahrzeit is tomorrow. This is a lie. Our people were murdered and raped and killed and burned. Did we take knives and go behead people? Who came up with this idea? It's Karl Marx. He believes that everything is connected to financial situation. I have not been to India, but how many of you have been to India? Everybody who has been to India, Bar lived there, tells me that this is the sweetest people in the world. No shoes, no home, but they're smiling. How come they're not raping? How come they're not going around and bombing children and so on? So don't buy this. He has been confused by this so-called liberation theology, which appeared in the 60s and 70s in Latin America. Most of the priests bought into this. It's a lie. Poverty has nothing to do with that. Billions of people are very, very poor. They're sweet people. They're kind people. So that's something that I was upset about. All right. We will not get into theodicy, but you know what? Next week we will, because it is theodicy, the definition. Theodicy is a Greek word that basically, that's why I began to say that this is the toughest question for any religion. If God is good and all-powerful and all-knowing, how come there are good people who suffer? This is called theodicy. God and fairness. How is it possible that they can coincide? If He is good and He is all-powerful, He could stop cancer. If He is good and all-powerful and not all-knowing, how come I'm in pain? How come I lost my child? How come I lost my husband? Why am I suffering? This is the toughest question throughout in history. And that's what I want to deal with next week. Get ready for that. Ilan, please.